It's 8 o'clock East Coast time, so I'm going to do my best to make this as interactive as I can, especially since it's the end of the day. So thank you for sticking it out. I'm glad that you guys are here with me. So my name is Rick Hobbs. I am Med-Peds at the University of North Carolina, and what I'm going to talk about today is actually something I've been working on now for a couple of years, but hopefully is relatively attainable. So it's all in the palm of your hand. So my goal was to use mobile technology, and literally technology that can fit into the pocket of a white coat, to actually help guide my students. So why did we do this? Well, I'll tell you. And here will be the objectives that we'll talk about in the next 45 minutes. So I'm going to tell you what we did with our iPad initiative and why we started it. And I'm actually going to tell you about our implementation data, because we actually collected data on it as well. And then we're going to actually show you how we set up the device, because I'm sure what you guys want to know is what's actually on the device. And then we'll talk about if you're interested in potentially doing it at your own institution, how you could potentially do it at your own institution and the tools that I've used. And then the workshop worksheet that you guys have out in front of you will help you answer some of those questions to help identify key people involved in potentially making this process. Welcome. All right, so we created a technology medical education program, and in large part at the University of North Carolina, it's to make sure that all of these people are in the room together, speaking with each other, and quite frankly, so that we can benefit from each other's wisdom, eventually get funding, and at a state institution, we've scraped all this by the bottom of the barrel, okay? So all of this is very much achievable. And these are the components in our technology medical education program. So this is actually a shot of rounds where I actually handed my iPad to the senior resident and said, here, you're actually talking about this, I actually just want you to use the iPad to teach it. And so she actually taught indications for dialysis, was what she was teaching here at the moment. I'll come on the side so I don't block your view. So why did I decide that an iPad could be a potential way to teach our medical students? So this is my son. So I taught my daughter how to speak in Spanish and read in Spanish in part using an iPad. And I'm teaching my son actually how to read playing The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past on my old school Super Nintendo. But he's learning to write and doing lots of other interactive things using an iPad. So if I can teach him these very important life skills, surely I can teach these high-achieving, well-educated millennial learners how to do it, how to be a great doctor, how to care for patients using the same technology. All right, but when I was in medical school, when I went back and forth to school uphill both ways, I had these things called number 2 pencils. So why do I actually need it? Anybody remember this picture, the story of this picture?
Yeah.
So they got a bad rap because it was actually a contest for submit your own selfie at the park today. But they got picked on as millennials who were always engaged with their screens instead of actually being engaged in the world. So to some degree, this is how millennials interact with the world and how they interact with their environment and their learning environment. And as you all know from watching every single MedX lecture, every single person in the room, you have multiple screens to compete with. Right? So it's not just the screen that you have here, it's actually the screen that's in front of you. So my hypothesis was if I built a setup that actually told them how to use technology in a wise manner, in a way that actually cared for patients, that they would actually use it. So that was my hypothesis. So who's this guy?
John Cena.
John Cena. It gets easier if you don't get the first time. Who's that guy? Hurrah. Who's that? All right. Good. So there's lots of pros for using a tablet. Those are all professional wrestlers. So it's ubiquitous, right? So lots of folks have them. It's portable. You can take it to any site. I teach pediatrics at 6 different sites over the state of North Carolina. So also, one of my challenges was how do I actually tell people that my curriculum is comparable at all of those 6 institutions? So it's lightweight, it's portable, it's you can use it at the point of care. That's not going to show up on that screen. All right. You can put lots of information on it. Anybody else not have enough computers at their institution for the med students? Or residents and attending sometimes? You can get access to the EMR. It's relatively inexpensive as far as technology goes. It's how they interact with the world. The material changes quickly, but do I need to be the one to keep up with it? There's lots of third-party people who can keep up with all of this data, so I don't need to. And it's a dynamic tool, and I can change it easily. There's also educational theory to this. It's interactive learning, it's distance learning, it's asynchronous learning. So lots of different opportunities. So this was actually a picture stolen from the Stanford website, which is why I included it. So this is simple one-to-one substitution. So how many folks in here wore white coats at some point in their lives? And what did you carry? What was your thing that you carried in residency?
Washington Manual.
Washington Manual. Anybody else?
Sanford.
Sanford, Washington Manual.
Juice. Guaiac juice.
Got a little bottle.
I had a Palm Pilot.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs.
So Harriet Lane is the one that you'll hear about in Pete's textbook. So Harriet Lane weighs 3 pounds. Okay, the Washington Manual, probably 3 pounds easily, right? So all of these things have been replaced by the smartphone and the tablet, right? So it's now your calculator. Shoot, it's your pen light. It's your medical record. It's your internet access. It's your reference materials. So it's replacing so many of these different things if we can utilize all of its potential attributes. Okay. So again, one of my problems, and this is what I sold to the administration in part, was I'm centered here in Chapel Hill, but I send students to the beach and to the mountains. I send them all over the place. So my big idea was create a suite of apps and links and documents that improve their education and their clinical care. And let's change the way that we actually educate and evaluate our students. And we'll facilitate the sharing of resources from my best educators in Charlotte all the way to my best educators in Wilmington. Okay. And then we'll actually be able to tell LCME that we're being comparable at the same time. And then we'll all look like this. At bedside, patient Nancy Cannula, explaining things, all is wonderful. So how did I go about doing this? So I started small. I got 2 very, very small grants, a couple $1,000, to pilot a project. And what we did is we piloted on the pediatric clerkship. And so we handed them devices and we took them back. Okay? So small amount of infrastructure buildup, right? I needed a handful of devices and I needed to give them out and take them back. And that's what we'll talk about. Now, I got this under an innovation grant from our AHEX because it also supported education around the state of North Carolina. But there are always people that are going to be negative. So who's this? This is hard. It's not Dillinger. It's a good guess. So maybe you'll get it by the next guy.
Bernie Madoff.
Yeah, Bernie Madoff. So this guy is Ponzi. So that's Ponzi. That's Madoff. Who's that guy? If nobody got those two? Okay. All right, so cons. So there's some cons. So you may be in this room where you may have stakeholders going, well, why in the heck do I need to do this? They have their laptops. They have their smartphones. There's hospital computers all over the place. Apple products are expensive. It's difficult for students to use. Tech is scary. Glitches be tripping. Okay? And it requires time commitment. Somebody's got to update it. What about professionalism? Do we really need, I mean, we heard one of those talks today, right? Do we really need more students doing this and not looking at our patients? Okay. And they already have their own devices, so do I need to buy them their own? And there's always early and late adopters. So the proof is in the pudding. So what I did to, again, build momentum at my own institution and try to say, here's a part, something that should be integral, is we actually studied our students. So 134 students, got a reasonable pre-response rate, a little bit less post-response rate, but still 98 of them started the survey. You'll see not all of them finished it. So how easy or difficult was it to use? So who's this guy?
Grumpy cat.
Grumpy cat.
But it's a she.
Who is she? I'm sorry. Who is she that is grumpy cat? So
That's why she's grumpy.
So of those students, only one of them found it difficult to use. Okay, so it's not a hard thing to use. And I also made one student repeat the course. I'm pretty sure that's him. I gave him a tablet just to be fair. How satisfied you were with your experience during the pediatric clerkship? So most all of them were satisfied, right? So very few were dissatisfied or somewhat dissatisfied. Okay. Estimate the amount of time in your busy third-year med student life. How much time did you use? So 5.68 hours. So 6 hours is a reasonable amount of time. So then I wanted to know actual outcomes as well. So when I needed to answer a question, this is student response. The tablet improved my efficiency as a student for a point of care question. So again, 60% of the students felt that just having the tablet alone helped them answer a question at bedside. All right, well that's pretty powerful when you're speaking to administration and when you're actually caring about patient care. My ability to provide effective patient care was improved with tablet use. So just having the tablet, did you feel like you were providing better patient care? About half. All right. In case you don't know this about medical students, they don't agree on a lot of things. So it's kind of nice that 1 out of 2 said that they were better. Overall, my performance as a student was improved. Again, about 1 and 2 said just having the tablet was helpful. Based on your experience in this clerkship, what is your attitude towards the use of tablets for medical education? So well over 75% of them were interested in actually continuing to use this kind of education to shape their experience.
Quick question, was there any confounding if they had other devices like, a tablet, for example?
So we
because
asked
that was the rise of the 5-inch tablets around 2014.
So we asked that question on the pre-survey. Not many of them had it. We did actually have some data on folks who had it before and after, And the data on those who had their own, they used our device better because of the structure that we'll get to in the layout. Good question. So compared to clerkships that did not use a tablet, this experience was better for my learning. So about a little over half said that it was better for their learning. So now, we asked that question pre and post. So pre, how worried are you about your professor when you use a smartphone or a tablet? Worried and very worried. That's what people are concerned. Okay. And that's what my faculty say. Well, great, it's another barrier to patient care. So afterwards, how do you feel like the tablet affected your professionalism? Okay, so it's not exactly the same question, but how did you feel like the tablet? So most were neutral. It didn't affect my experience at all. And actually 16% of them felt that it improved their professionalism. And there's some hypothesis generation that can happen there. So with this data, I said, actually, what was fun was that the medical students in the Student Government Association actually said, this is something that we should be adopting on a broader scale. And so I had a meeting with the Vice Dean of Education, with the Dean of Student Affairs, and I showed them all this data. I gave them the same presentation with the professional wrestlers. It took them to get to Hulk Hogan. But they liked it. And so what happened was we actually started rolling this out. So now, as of March of 2017, all 200 medical students at the University of North Carolina, regardless of site that they are at, are getting an iPad. So I got to be like Oprah Winfrey, you get an iPad, you get an iPad. So that was fun. And again, we get to expand to all these campuses. Now, for those of you interested, we actually don't teach the same curriculum. This is actually a very different curriculum in these 4 sites compared to these 2, which are longitudinal curricula. So that's another conversation, but if you're somebody here who has a longitudinal curriculum, I can talk about that as well. All right, so you guys want to see what's on the device? Yeah. All right. So while I'm doing that, there are 7 universities or colleges that have team names that do not end in S and do not have an animal in them. So start thinking about what that is. Say them out loud. What you got?
Hurricane. Stanford is one.
Stanford is one, hence the reason for the question. Strong word. Stanford Cardinal, which is not named after an animal, by the way. It's named after a color. We've reached the interactive portion of our show.
Miami Hurricane. No, it says S. It says out at with S. Tulane Green Wave?
That tablet needs to connect.
Tulane Green Wave? No.
Yes? Tulane Green Wave.
They're Division 1.
What about Duke? They're the Blue Devils, right?
Ends in an S.
Ends in an S.
So Notre Dame Fighting Irish,
Oh.
University of Illinois Fighting Illini, Stanford Cardinal, Syracuse Orangemen, Alabama Crimson Tide, my alumni, St. John Red Storm, and Tulane Green Wave. Did you enjoy your trivia?
Yes.
That was my stall tactic. All right, now I'm going to be tethered here. On the 5 tablets, I've done my best to try to attempt to connect. So you should have the same thing here. And I will collect your attention from time to time, but mostly look up here. So mostly look at the screen. All right, so what I've done, and first of all, these guys don't know it, but I actually lobbied to be in this room after y'all. I was in a leadership room, and I was like, you know what? Everything on this tablet is free. So everything that I've done, everything I've collected is free. There's a few things that require subscriptions through an institutional account through our health sciences library, but everything else is otherwise free, with the exception of a few things that I'll show you. So all of this stuff can be done relatively inexpensive fashion. Okay. So the way that this is set up, and we got student input for all of this design, was to make it as user-friendly as we can. I'm a big believer, quite frankly, in using the technologies available and not creating anything new. So none of this stuff is stuff that I've homemade designed. Okay. On the front page, you have things that will essentially be used in multiple different disciplines. And then on the second page, you have discipline-specific information. Okay? And then an app that I downloaded from a new stock earlier today. So there's lots of different things, and I'll go through a fair number of them because I think people probably will be interested to know what's on here, and I'll go quickly and superficially, and of course I'll stay and answer questions afterwards. So there's certain things that come automatically, one of which is helpful for troubleshooting purposes is BombGuard, so that is useful because my IT guys can actually remote into their desktop and troubleshoot if they're having problems. So it's nice, and that's one of the key stakeholders get involved is to make sure you have IT involved.
The device management system.
We'll talk about that in a second. We'll come back to device management. One of the things that I do is I talk to our students about productivity. So I want them to not only use the tablet for their own education, and I didn't present that data, but our students primarily used it for shelf test preparation. They use it for EMR access. They didn't use it as much for patient communication, which I really want to change. And they used it a lot for answering clinical questions. But I also want to change the way that they interact with material. So already I've seen the fruit of this in the past month with our students. So one of the things that I've done is, how many of you have wonderful bedside teachers and they gave you this wonderful handout and you thought it was the best thing since sliced bread and you were going to keep it and love it forever, and that anemia talk was going to stay here in your white coat and just slowly over time it just withered and browned and died like a little flower. Okay, so what I've talked to my students about now is, well, you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to rely on this paper copy. So instead, we install either a free scanner app, Cam Scanner, or the $3 Scanner Pro app, and they can scan the document. They have it there. They can upload it. They can upload it in Goodreader, which is a paid app. So, but in Goodreader, they can annotate their PDFs that they've scanned. They can annotate a PDF that's been uploaded for a lecture. They can change the PowerPoint PDF and annotate it there. So if they go to lectures, it can also change the way they take notes on lectures. Of course, there's free note-taking apps as well, so they can do reminders and notes. They can use QR readers to sign into lectures. So we can, again, change the way that we take attendance. We can change the way, because everybody has one of these devices. Okay, so it actually gives us the opportunity to change a little bit about even some of our workflows. So I have students go to the NICU and they talk to a family, and it's a paper assignment. It's meant to be self-contained. They write their reflection, and they're done in 3 hours. So what I do is I have them take a simple picture of it, and then they upload it and they send it to me via email. And it's very simple, and it's changed the workflow, and it's a bedside work. So that's productivity, and there's plenty more that we could talk about there, but for the sake of time. There's plenty of teaching tools, which I will not talk about right now, because Anoop did a great job talking about Bayboard earlier. Doceri is essentially a piece of paper. I really like Doceri because it is a very simple substitution for a piece of paper. And so I can write my very simple routine talks. So for example, the last time I used it, I was on the hallway of 6 children talking about, and my drawing is horrible, let's be honest. Talking about how there was a blood clot in the child's IVC, and I was worried that, as large as it was, that it could potentially break off and affect his kidney, and the child already had kidney. Right, so I could do a very simple drawing at bedside to communicate the medical issues, again, as a substitute for paper. I also have a couple of things that I just teach about on a regular basis. So here's my general approach to fever and infectious disease, right? So here's the things that we need to talk about. And it's always there, and I can just click on it, and it's very simple, right? There's nothing even more to it. I'm not speaking over it, nothing like it. Substitution for paper. So that's Doceri, that's free. Bayboard is also free. Explain everything you guys know is a little bit expensive. I also use Kahoot. I think Kahoot is fantastic and cheap and easy and great on bedside rounds. So that's another useful one. In that room, earlier this hour, I demonstrated GroupMe as how to teach from a distance using social media, and it's wonderful.
Have you ever seen, I think something that would tie in nicely to this would be something like Schoolology?
I haven't, but I'd love to hear about
it. It's a method you can actually test the medical students, like, on like a grading basis eventually from home, like an open book test, obviously. But yeah, it tied in really nicely. It's a free app.
Yeah, this is part of the reason why I come here, because there's always new stuff that I learn, which is fun.
It's really cool.
The other thing that I had done, and this actually affects choice of setup for iPads if you're thinking about creating an iPad curriculum. One of the things that I've done is actually have collected links. So a lot of what you'll see are actually not apps, but what they do is they give the feel of them, even though it's essentially a one-touch button. So I tell my students at orientation, when you get your diarrhea on pediatrics, before you roll out of bed, click that admin excuse, and it'll take you right there. Right? So common links to the School of Medicine contacts, the calendars, all that sort of thing. Our LMS is actually there as well. So that is another resource for our students. And it takes place, so again, they can even access all of their other assignments and those sorts of things on their LMS. For general references, again, these are wonderful tools that I don't have to keep readily updated. So CDC vaccine schedule, I tell them I'm a pediatrician and I can't remember when the vaccines are due, or at least the contraindications and other things. So the CDC vaccine app will always do it for me. For my brand new medical students, On Exam and Pocket Physical Exam will actually tell you. So how many of you are solid on what to ask during an ophthalmologic examination? Everybody good with that? Maybe not, okay? But if I click on ophthalmology, it will actually guide my medical student before, if they know the chief complaint, to go down to the emergency department, actually ask those past ocular history questions. Ooh, okay. You need to remember to think about those sorts of things. All right, so here's my HPI, decreased vision, red eye, all the sorts of things that they need to ask. So we'll help guide them through physical exams. So again, everything I'm showing you so far is free, if I haven't said it already. One of the things that I like, and it was an app and now it's a web link, is the Stanford 25. Anybody, folks are familiar with the Stanford 25, right? So I teach this a lot to faculty physicians as well, and I say, all right, how many of you have lots and lots of time to teach your medical students everything that you want to, particularly physical exam? Crickets, right? So instead, what I say is, all right, let's say that you've got an afternoon clinic schedule and you've got 12 patients and one of them is coming back from the hospital post-discharge with a stroke. Great. Well, you can activate your learner and you can say, what I want you to do is I want you to go see Mr. Jones, and I know that he had a stroke. But what I want you to do is I want you to lead us through the neurologic exam. So open your tablet, click on the Stanford 25, and instead of me teaching the cerebellar exam, Abraham Verghese is going to teach the cerebellar exam, okay? So it actually facilitates teaching for our faculty as well. It's going to take a while to load, so I'm not going to go through everything, but essentially there's a nice collection of videos. And so again, the term that the Apple folks and other people would use is that this is curation. So I've not created any of this content. What I've done is try to put it in a fashion that is user-friendly, that it can be used to answer multiple different tasks, and ultimately improve the care of our patients. So lots of other things. So Read by QXMD is a wonderful free application at the moment that pulls in through your health sciences library. So everything that my health sciences library has a subscription to, I can pull up, I can pull the PDF, I can make my own collections, I can review those on rounds. So one of the things when I do faculty development is I'll say, great, you've got your tablet. If you're looking on, say I have a patient with spina bifida, and I can actually go through the New England Journal of Medicine article that on spina bifida review, and I can pull up the one that talks about the exit procedure. And I can show them that article on rounds, and then I can email it to them directly. So lots of different ways that you can use some of these general reference tools as well. Of course, there's drug references, Medscape, Hippocrates. UCentral has a number of things, but this is Johns Hopkins antibiotic guide as well. Has anybody used GoodRx before? Mm-hmm. So GoodRx is a wonderful example of how this technology can actually change patient care. So GoodRx is a patient-facing, it's a consumer-facing, it's anybody. So last time I gave this talk, I was in Chapel Hill. So now I'm going to click that button. I'm going to use my current location. It says we're in Menlo Park. Maybe that's true. And you can see the last things that I search for, some of the expensive drugs. So this is another way to teach our medical students patient-centered care. So, all right, how much is it actually going to cost for that Cefixime for that patient without insurance? Do you need Cefixime, or can you get away with Cefazolin? Right? So it's $80.27 with a coupon, but if you send them to the safe where they usually go, it's going to be $176. So you can take the location of the tab in space, pull the pharmacies around, and help guide your patient. Now there's some limitations. So this will show your patients where it won't have all the independent pharmacists, and it won't have Costco. So there's some limitations. But when you get the coupon, you click on the link, you click free coupon, and then you can email it, text it, save it to photos. You can share it with your patients in a number of different ways. Okay? So what if we actually taught our patients that, or our med students that? So what I'm having happen is I did this for the PA students as well. They're going out to their communities. They're showing these technologies to their physicians, and their physicians are going, I want one of those. Show me how to use it. I want to download it. Because our students are educating our providers. Who likes doing pre-authorizations? Yeah, okay. So formulary will help you with that as well. Again, totally free app. Communication, Canopy folks are downstairs, so they have a wonderful app that our institution pays for. So how many of you wish you could speak better Spanish? Come on, one person, nobody else? All right, so this is a wonderful way that you can actually do some very specific scans. So if you are Obviously, this shouldn't substitute for an interpreter, but it works nicely.
De la cabeza muestra un sangrado dentro del cráneo.
If I'm waiting, and I don't want to wait for somebody to tell them that they've got a bleed in their head. Okay?
Which app is this?
That's Canopy Speak. Okay. So of course it doesn't substitute as an interpreter, but it is there. When they speak back to you, then it gets a little bit more challenging. It's a nice way to at least say that you understand the communication barriers you're trying to.
But you got Google Translate, so.
That's right. I've got lots of different things up there to help bridge the gap. One thing that I want to.
Canopy, it somehow knows where you are because when you hit the call button, it calls our hospital's translation.
That is an additional feature.
It was free though. It wasn't anything I.
So it can link to your own interpreters.
So yeah, it links to our hospital interpreters.
One of the apps that I like to show, it doesn't matter if you're a pediatrician or not, is Simply Saying. This was developed by Phoenix Children's folks, and it is wonderful. It's got a number of different things. It's written in English and Spanish, and it's also written in plain language, okay, which is easy. So one of the things I like to do, I want to change again the way that we interact with our patients by using this tablet. So if they're going to have a bone marrow aspiration, click this, open it, hand it to the patient, show it to the patient, leave the room, come back, ask them if they have questions. So here's what your bone marrow aspirations, here's what's going to happen, those sorts of things. Okay. Sometimes it does that. The other thing that it does, say for example you have a patient who is claustrophobic and is going to have an MRI, I can actually go into the picture section and I can go down to an MRI and it will show them the picture of what the MRI, and it will actually play the sounds. Dramatic pause. It usually plays the sounds. Live demos. All right. So the other thing that it will do is there's very common drawing. So DrawMD is another app that's wonderful for drawing, but this is one that I also like to use. So here's what a PICC line looks like. It looks like a regular IV, but wait, if you go, actually, even though you're seeing this part, what our real goal is to deliver the medication straight to you. Okay, so again, all of this stuff is free that we're showing as well. There's lots of test prep things. Case files was one. Our school had institutional membership to Firecracker, UWorld. Even though I can't afford it, they often get it for themselves. You can certainly do this for quizzes and flashcards. So there's tons of open sourced flashcards, sets that medical students have made, and all I have to do is just link to them. Okay, so if I open that, there's 700 PEDS questions, which is way too many for a 6-week block, but I can curate them down if I had time to do that. But somebody else made them, we just took them together. Okay. Paging system, the calculator, QX Calculate as a medical calculator is there as well, and then all the things that they can use. The way that I have this device set up, they actually can load whatever. They can load their own Apple ID. They can load their own apps. If they want to put Tinder and Angry Birds on there, by all means, you can put Tinder. I suggest that they keep it as a personal device, but this is the way that it's set up purposely for adult learners. The trick is that some of the software is quite frankly designed for K through 12, which requires heavy supervision, even though we have adult learners, and we can come to that in just a second. But we are an Epic-based institution, and so Epic, multiple ways to interact with it, Citrix Receiver, Canto. Of course, they all love their up-to-date. Documents is one that I saw a new pat earlier. It is wonderful. It is free, and I don't understand how it's free either. And it is a fantastic repository. You can basically put in your whole file structure and share with it. So for example, I like to, on bedside rounds, teach with our UNC antibiogram and actually walk them through a clinical question. And it's just a simple PDF that I have at bedside. It's wireless independent, so for those resources that you might want out in communities, you can have whatever you want here, wireless, without wireless access. So another example would be if you go to the outpatient references, what are the things that you're supposed to ask at a 9-month well child check? Right? A little bit tricky, but here they are, all the PDFs are there, and so they're available for them. Drive safety. He told me. There's a whole lot more things that I could talk about on the discipline-specific things, but I'll show you very briefly. One very cool thing, if any surgeons are in here, is touch surgery, which will actually use the device, and actually you can move the trocar, and you can take out the gallbladder. Of course, it's not like the real thing, but it ain't bad for what it is. Hey, if you can't remember how to scrub and gown because your orientation was 6 weeks before you got into the OR for the first time, here's your videos. Here's your one-hand tie, your two-hand tie, simple links to YouTube, those sorts of things. Convinced? No? Skeptical?
So you preload the iPads with all these?
I preload the iPads and give them out. That's correct. And now we're talking about how I did it. How am I doing on time? Let me check it out.
You got 10 minutes.
All right.
Richard, do you have a list of all the apps somewhere else? Like, so we're not taking screenshots, or maybe I missed it. Sorry.
I do not have a ready list at the moment, but I can get one. Okay, so logistics and setup. So if you're thinking about doing this, here's what it actually requires. It requires, so what I'm using, actually these are iPad mini 2s, 32 gigs, and they're actually down to $200 and something. Currently what we're using for all the students is iPad mini 4s, Wi-Fi only, no cell service. The case and the keyboard cost $30 to $50. The device itself is only $379, so it's not that bad. You need one Apple computer, and you can use Apple Configurator software to load all these programs up, which is free. Apps, again, I showed you everything on the computer, on the device is essentially free with a handful of things costing less than $10. Okay, so you don't need a whole lot of money after the fact, after the hardware, quite frankly, to do this. A USB hub will work. I own one of these 20-piece hubs, and I did all 200 by hand, more than 20 at a time. There's other ways to do it as well with MDM software that you can actually push all of the things to the computer, to the device, but it actually does some restrictions. And so I chose to do all this a little bit more manually, but for those of you who are less inclined to do something in large grand scope,